Hello everyone, and welcome back to Histories Uncharted. I am your host today, Shanna, and I am here as always with my super awesome co-host, Cecilia.
Greetings, everybody.
And today we have the very special privilege of being joined with a dear friend of ours, Mike.
Hello everyone. Thank you so much for inviting me.
We're super excited to have you here, so thanks for coming.
I appreciate it. I'm super excited too.
I hope that you enjoy the topic today, and this is where I'm going to take a moment to give a little warning of this particular episode is going to be mature content, as it will have explicit material that deals with pain, blood, torture, horrible things that humans do to each other. So this is your opportunity that if that's not your jam, please turn back now.
Turn back, Sarah.
So this is our fourth episode in our spooky series of Halloween month of October, where we have all sorts of fun, macabre, dark, different episodes. So thank you so much for joining us, and we're excited to talk about torture devices through the ages, as we did start in antiquity, and very terrifyingly, I discovered that a lot of these are still being used by our own CIA and other governments around the world. So that was probably the most terrifying thing that I discovered in all of this research.
I cannot wait to see the ones that are still being used.
I tried to avoid, but I would call them out. We are sticking with historical torture devices in antiquity and up to 1700s or there. We are a historical podcast and not a modern commentator.
Indeed, Elise, but that's still kind of terrifying that recent history in the last 200 so years.
And super fun fact, as we've created new technologies, we've apparently branched out into new and terrifying ways of torture. So that was very scary. But we're going to bring it on back to our historical perspective. And another thing is I'm going to just present these in alphabetical order as well, because I couldn't decide if it was like timeline or impact to body or mental impact, so we just went
super fun. So we're going to be jumping around in time.
Correct.
That's fun.
It's alphabetical.
So going alphabetically.
Yeah, and I tried to put the time frame of when this device is used.
Yeah. A little bit of variety for us.
Yeah, and it's not all devices, it's just torture methods and techniques through the ages.
I love that. And fair warning, like, Mike and I have not been prepped in any of this. Usually we have show notes and a general idea of what we're going to be discussing. Remember, we are the non-historians in the room. So we don't know what we're going to talk about. I'm a little nervous. I'm a little freaked out. I know that we have been provided pictures. So if you would like to join us on our YouTube channel, we will have a video that is going to show all of the different pictures that Mike and I get to look at.
That's so exciting.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
I'm very excited.
I was imagining you guys would just get your vivid imaginations, but you get the same pictures that we do. That's going to be great.
Yep. Only on the YouTube channel. Every other way that you listen to your podcast, it will be only audibly. Audibly.
So go check out that YouTube channel.
Yay!
Oh, nice plug, Mike.
Thanks, Mike. All right, are we ready? Are we excited?
Yeah, no, I'm freaked out. Let's do this.
Okay, so I will let you turn over your pages now, because I haven't even let them look at the pictures yet. So we are going to start with blinding. We're going to the B's.
No A's?
No A's.
That's
no,
all right.
Go and jump to B. Blinding is a type of physical punishment which results in complete or nearly complete loss of vision. It was used as an act of revenge or torture. The punishment has been used since antiquity. Greek mythology makes several references to blinding as divine punishment. In the Byzantine Empire, which I love, so you're going to get a lot of upcoming stories about the Byzantines, and a lot of other historical societies, blinding was accomplished by gouging out the eyes, sometimes using a hot poker, and then they would pour a boiling substance such as vinegar into them.
Boiling vinegar?
Yeah, well, how else are you gonna like disinfect or?
They cared about disinfecting.
So a big thing, especially with the Byzantines, which is really fun, is like they would do this to kill you, but the act of blinding, they weren't killing you. You died of secondary infection, or maybe like the process of blinding was, or something. So it was more God's fault than your fault. So it was a way to kill them without killing them.
Oops,
Yeah.
you died.
Yeah, I didn't mean for you to die, but you did.
But you did anyways.
Yeah, but not everybody did, so that's why blinding is on the torture list
Right.
for us. So I have a couple examples of blinding. And I just say this every podcast, but I'm going to say it again, especially this episode. These names are going to be fun. And I'm just going to do the best that I can.
That's cool.
Okay.
That's cool.
Okay. This one's not too bad. Lucia of Syracuse. So this is 283 to 304 Common Era. Okay. So about 300 Common Era. Lucia was born to a wealthy family, and her dad died when she was 5. She vowed to remain a virgin for God, which a lot of women did. But when mom began, she knew she was going to die. She wanted to make sure that her daughter was cared for. So she like betrothed her to this dude really without her wanting to. And so Lucia began to give her dowry away to the poor. And her betrothed found out and got really pissed about this. He like, it was like stealing from him kind of. So
Right.
he turned her in to the authorities for giving her his dowry, basically, away to the poor. So she was asked to just burn a sacrifice for forgiveness to the pagan gods, and she refused. So her punishment was to be sentenced to be defiled in a brothel. After this, she still refused to marry him, and she refused to deny God, so she was set to be executed by fire. But the wood would not burn, so they thrust a sword through her throat.
I feel like that should be a pretty good sign that they should turn back and not do anything to her if the wood doesn't burn. Like,
Isn't that a divine sign?
exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they don't believe in God and didn't think it was an intervention, so they're proving her God doesn't exist. And her
This is in pagan times, right? Common Era. So
right when the
before-
paganism and Christianity is starting to arise, and they're conflicting with each other
Right.
a lot. Yeah. So that's Lucia. All right. So she was blinded and defiled in a brothel before finally having a sword thrust.
That's absolutely awful.
I know. Okay, so, oh my gosh, I'm really sorry about this one. Ripsime, okay? So she was possibly of noble birth. She belonged to a community of 35 virgins in Rome. She was known to be extremely beautiful, and she attracted the attention of Emperor Diocletian. Remember that name, we're going to see him a lot.
Diocletian.
Diocletian.
Emperor Diocletian.
Roman
name, man.
Emperor Diocletian, yeah. Okay, so to avoid his advances, she, along with her community, fled the city. It was ordered that Ripsime be tortured. Her tongue was cut out, her stomach cut open, and she was blinded before finally being killed. Her body was then cut into pieces. Inspired by her example, the leader of the group and 2 other nuns gave themselves over to similar treatment before being beheaded. The rest of the 35 virgins in her community were put to the sword, and their bodies were thrown to the beasts to be eaten.
I love these tales of optimism. It's so sweet. It's so heartwarming.
This is not the optimistic episode. That's not where we're going today.
That's horrible. So it seems like blinding was, in a lot of the tales that you're giving us, are just part of
Oh, yeah.
this situation, that blinding, like, could have been done as, like, an eye for an eye situation, but it seems like it was just in a slew of other tortures that they received.
I see what you did there.
I see. Yeah, sometimes. Of course, there were often times where they were just blinded. This was very common, especially with, like, prisoners. So I have 1,000 prisoners, and these soldiers, I blind them all, and then I release them into the wild, and, you know, most of them die, but they just blinded him, you know.
That boiling vinegar.
It
was a good attempt, you know?
All right, so that was blinding. Now we have the boots.
Yeah.
Imagine what that must mean.
The boots have several variations of torture. Some torturers attached leather boots around the victim's feet and poured scalding hot water over them. The water was so hot it would dissolve the flesh and sometimes ate through the bone.
Like they were pouring it into their leather boots?
Okay, so the image that you guys are looking at is the metal crushing one. This example is they're going to wrap you in leather and then they're going to pour hot water. And what leather does when it's wet is it constricts and stuff. And so it's going to hold this boiling water, which is going to melt your skin, possibly down to the bone.
That's
and
wild.
It's going to tighten the leather around the body. So what you're looking at is the metal version, which is a vise. And so it would encase the foot and lower leg and would be turned with a crank as it tightened, and it would crush the bones. And sometimes they had spikes on the inside to sever the muscles and tendons and ligaments as it is crushing.
Well, that's good. That at least then you're not just getting your muscles crushed to jelly. You're getting minced up a little bit too.
Yeah.
It's like a meat grinder.
Yeah. A lot of these have a crushing aspect because the wince and the vise was an easy mechanical device to create and use at this time.
Technology, everyone.
Other variations, foot roasting was involved. The victim's foot would be slathered in lard and roasted over a fire.
Ooh, that sounds terrible.
We have more of those coming.
That sounds like, I bet the smell, though, was very nice.
No, not.
Barbecue.
Roasting meat
with
That's
lard.
like-
with lard?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, human or not, man, it's still roasting meat.
Yeah, dude, imagine your leg getting roasted and you're like, wow, okay. That actually kind of smells good. This is painful,
And then
but-
Vlad would make you eat it.
Yeah, he would. Vlad would make you eat it.
So this one's a favorite for a lot of people. It's called the Crocodile Shears. These are a torture instrument used in late medieval Europe, and these were reserved for men who tried to assassinate the king. These shears were made of metal. Based on the concept of pinchers, the inside of their blades were lined with a great amount of spikes. After being heated to an excruciatingly hot temperature, the crocodile shears were applied to the victim's erect penis,
I knew
Don't.
which was then torn from his body.
I didn't want you to say it.
Or, if he was lucky, the device would just lead to intense bleeding from severed arteries.
Oh, man.
I really do hope that you guys at least like Google crocodile shears.
Not all of them have a little face of the crocodile, but this particular example I think does, and he was just so cute.
I appreciate that this is reserved for like a very specific type of person. I could imagine the torturer like has like a special shelf.
There's nothing
one's
I
for
appreciate
treason.
about this.
I know. This one's for treason, this one's for theft. You don't like this one?
No.
Well, then don't commit treason against the king.
Okay. I
Murdering
promise.
kings is bad business.
No treason against kings or emperors.
And apparently your penis.
Yeah. I love that it's erect. Like, so you're in the dungeon. Old Smith there who hasn't showered in God knows how long.
I didn't want to ask,
Is
like, how did
bringing
that
you out.
happen?
How is that
I don't-
erection
Yeah.
acquired?
I don't know.
That's a really good question, though. It's a really good one.
Again, these are the in-depth, hard-hitting questions we ask here at Histories Uncharted.
Your imagination.
An
Fill the
artistic
answer
license. All right. Oh, on that fun note, we're going to talk about castration.
Oh, good. Even more entertainment for me.
Yeah.
And this was actually really, really common.
Oh, super common. I
Yeah.
couldn't even get through the long list of examples. We just choose a few.
Yeah, this one
Yeah.
wasn't even necessarily torture, right? Like they just did
Or
this.
Some of them were chosen, yeah.
Like the eunuchs.
Yeah, yep. It was a gift or a promotion. The castrati in Italy, they did it before they hit puberty to have beautiful singing voices. So there's lots and lots of reasons. The Janissaries and the Constantinople
I
episode.
was gonna say, yeah, call back to the Janissaries.
Yeah, so those were elite soldiers. They had good jobs, and it was a good position for a man. But this is not for those purposes.
Okay.
Yeah, we're
This
talking
is-
specific punishment here.
Yeah, we're talking torture today, people. So, castration is any action, surgical, chemical, or otherwise, by which a male loses the use of his testicles. But emasculation is the removal of the external male sex organs, which includes both the penis and the scrotum, which, includes the testicles.
Well, Cecilia just got learned today.
Yeah.
Okay, so I always thought that castration was the whole genitalia.
Just testicles.
It's just the testicles, so they would still have a... Because
You
my
okay, Mike?
question...
No. I learned something I didn't want to learn.
Okay, maybe I don't want to ask this question,
Go
but now I
ahead.
really want to ask
Do
this
it.
question. I was
What you
always
got?
curious. How would they have peed? But that was the emasculation is what you called it?
Correct.
Wow.
And
There's
they...
probably like a little pee hole still. Just like
Correct.
a little teeny one.
Correct. There are
Yeah.
images of castrated and emasculated victims online that it was still a punishment so far into our history that we had cameras
yeah.
created.
Well,
so
I'm not going to go look those
So
up.
well into like
You
what
can.
1890s or something. That's absolutely insane.
yeah, so there are images online that you can look at of people that had either willingly for their religion or as a punishment
wow.
had either their genitals removed or their breasts removed.
Wow, I don't think I will ever Google those. Our castration pictures are, pretty tame.
Yeah.
The ones that we'll share.
I don't know why I looked. It's like,
We get to flip the page now. Mike, I
thank
promise.
you.
Okay. So in the Middle East, the Caliphate in Baghdad at the beginning of the 10th century had 7,000 black eunuchs and 4,000 white eunuchs in his palace. The Arab slave trade typically dealt in the sale of castrated male slaves. Black boys at the age of 8 to 12 had their scrotum and penis completely amputated. Reportedly, about 2 out of 3 boys died, but those that survived drew high prices.
That is so many.
That is so many.
Wow.
2 out of 3 died.
Poor little
and
boys.
if he keeps 7,000, somebody, let's do the math. I'm not a...
Oh gosh, yeah. 7,000 times 3, I guess. So 21,000 were castrated to get the 7,000.
Wow.
My math might be wrong.
No, I think you're correct.
Listeners, go ahead and leave comments on my math, which is fine. I'm the bottom 14th percentile in math, so I take it. I'm a history major. 21, I know that.
Okay.
But you put all the zeros in there, and that's when it started
Yeah,
to get lost.
yeah. The zeros are what do it. At least there's no fractions or percentages.
Oh, man.
Okay, so this one, I'm really glad that there is a picture, and it's not a picture of it happening to a human. It is a picture of the equipment.
Ooh.
So this is a common comb. This was commonly used to prepare wool and other fibers for spinning. Okay, so you would take the woolen fibers and put them over the comb and brush through them, and it would separate them so that you could be able to break them down to be able to spin them into
Cool. So
fabric.
the combings are like a paddle with like sharp nails, maybe 2 to 3 inches long.
Yeah, they're pretty
sticking out of
yeah,
the
almost
thicker into the paddle.
almost actually as long as the fingers, honestly.
Okay.
Yeah, so picture
Yeah,
like
2 to 3 inches.
See, math again, not
That's cool.
me and numbers.
I like the versatility, being able to use something you already have lying around the house.
See, you make you make use of what you got. Okay, so you take this comb that you guys are looking at, and you heat it to an excruciating temperature, and then you use it to scrape, tear, and flay the victim's flesh.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to do my best here. Fabronia of Nisibis. So she met up with that awesome emperor Diocletian. She was offered her freedom if she renounced her faith and married his nephew, Lysimachus. We're going to go with that. So Lysimachus had kind of been leaning towards Christianity, back and forth, paganism, couldn't make up his mind, so he's going to ask Fabronia to marry him. She refused. She was tortured, suffered mutilation, and death. She lived through combing, being crushed by the wheel, and other tortures before she was beheaded.
Oh my gosh.
See, again, I think that after you get through the combing, you should just be like, okay, seems like somebody out there wants her to live. We'll stop here.
Well, it's really them that are making these decisions if
Exactly,
she lives or dies, so yeah. The sources, unfortunately, it always says, like, other tortures. And you always wonder, what are those other tortures?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I do.
We always do wonder what other tortures.
This one's for you, Cecilia.
Thanks, girl.
You're welcome. Okay, so this is foot burning. The Romans would immobilize a prisoner and pressed red-hot iron plates to the soles of their feet. The Spanish Inquisition would bound the prisoner face upward on the rack with his bare feet secured in a stock. And then the soles of his feet, again, were basted with lard or oil and slowly barbecued over a brazier of burning coals.
Oh, God.
But that really wasn't the one I was saving for you. This is for you, sweetie.
So, real quick.
Yeah, of
Is
course.
the foot burning,
Yeah.
did that have anything in conjunction with the booting?
It did. It didn't necessarily need the contraption. The boot was the contraption of the crushing, and sometimes you would get burned as well. This is exclusively foot burning
Okay.
because we differentiate, you know. Okay, sweet girl, here you go. A form of torture called star kicking supposedly began with Countess Elizabeth Bathory,
Oh, I love her.
Bathory.
who
Callback.
derived sadistic pleasure from placing oiled bits of paper or string between her prisoner's toes and lighting the material on fire, inflicting savage burns.
Her
Allegedly.
husband taught her that.
Allegedly.
Allegedly. I'm so sorry. Allegedly, her husband taught her that. Good times.
Dr. Bathory.
No.
Definitely not a vampire or serial killer.
Oh, I love that. You're going to call her Dr. Bathory.
So Mike is a longtime listener and longtime friend of Histories Uncharted, and he is referencing one of our first episodes of the Hungarian Countess Elizabeth Bathory, who is
So if you haven't listened, you should most definitely go back and listen.
yeah, of course, because it's the best.
Really good.
It was great. Please do.
But she's down in history as a serial killer and possibly a vampire, but there's a alternate possibility that maybe she was running a women's health clinic in medieval Hungary, and men didn't really appreciate this and smattered her reputation. But who knows? There's lots of witnesses, and it was a fun thing, so go listen for yourself and make up your own decision.
Absolutely. She was a really fun character in history. So
She was.
do go listen. if
That's
you
what
have
we
not.
talk about all the time. Fun characters in history. Just wait what's coming up after this.
With a tinge of optimism.
All right, so next we have the Heretics Fork.
I like this one.
This one looks really, really cool. I would Google this. if
I
were you.
recommend. It's
This is a brutal ancient torture device. It consists of two forks connected to a bar, okay? So one pointed end went just beneath the chin, and then the other pointed into the sternum. So even the slightest movement of the head or the jaw, it would stab into them, and this is like excruciating pain. This normally was so painful that it forced people to not only confess to whatever they were accused of, but they also began revealing their deepest secrets and fears, which were then used against them later during their trial.
Yeah. I could imagine, like, that would be exhausting. Oh my gosh.
Honestly, I think those are some of the most interesting torture devices, are the ones that test your endurance.
Ooh. Man, see? You came on here. I knew there was a dark streak in you, Mike. I knew it. All right, everyone. That brings us to the Judas chair, or maybe the Judas cradle. This is a torture device invented in the 16th century Spain. During this torture, the criminal, or accused, or victim, was first positioned in a waist harness above a sharp pyramid-shaped seat. The point was then inserted into the anus or vagina of the accused, and then the person was slowly lowered by a system of ropes. The victim of course, usually naked, adding to the overall humiliation. And they are tortured by intense pressure and stretching of the orifice. Sometimes various weights were tied to the leg to dramatically increase the pain and eventually tear muscular tissues of the orifice. This torture could last possibly a few hours, several days. This device was never washed, so the torture could often lead to painful infections or even death.
So I'm sorry, they would like take them off of this if they lasted a few days, and then would let them just. Oh man.
Yeah, so you just sit on it for a few days because this is the torture, not the execution episode. Spoiler alert: executions are coming.
Okay, so
this is just torture.
I want to paint the crowd a picture here because this dude is sitting on this Judas chair, roped up above it. Okay, and then there are like a couple of dudes. They're just chilling in chairs, just watching, just
judges or witnesses. Yeah,
just hanging
there's
out.
a dude with a scroll and a feather taking notes.
So this is often a public form of punishment, crowd control. You make huge displays of public authority, just like Vlad Tepes with the impaling.
Right.
This is what they would use so that criminals would know this is your punishment.
Yeah.
If you do this, this is what's going to happen to you.
Where was this common? Do you know where this is common?
The Spanish Inquisition in the 1600s was when they, or 16th century when they
said
first.
that, didn't you?
I did.
That's when they really innovate on the tortures, the Spanish Inquisition.
They do. They get so creative.
They were very, very creative. That's where
I think it's a matter of funding.
And the Pitch and the Pendulum. That was very creative.
Imagine being that guy during the Spanish Inquisition was like, you know what? What if we try one of these?
I know. I think that the human creativity has always been there. I think the Spanish Inquisition really allowed the funding and resources needed to really expand.
The Judas chair, I always imagined being primarily body weight. So I didn't know that it was chains or ropes.
Sometimes weights are then like attached to your ankles, which would pull you down as well, stretching and tearing, but only so far.
Because it's incredibly large. It's not like a spear or anything.
Correct.
It's like a pointed seat, like a pyramid.
Yes.
Almost.
Yeah.
So it does only go so far in, unlike the stake for impalement.
Right.
Again, recommend checking out that YouTube channel for a visual aid.
This is one of my favorites. It's called keel hauling. This is not a good enough picture to really represent this particular form of torture, and I don't know why it appeals to me, but it really does.
Because they're on boats.
Yeah, I'm a very water person.
You love
Let's hear the picture you illustrate with your words.
Okay, so this is a punishment dreamt up by sailors. So offenders were tied with ropes and dragged underwater from one end of the ship to the other. While many have died from this practice due to drowning or silly internal injuries, in theory, it really wasn't meant to be fatal. But a fun bonus, men who were punished by keel hauling were often cut mercilessly by barnacles on the bottoms of the ship, the keel, and carried the scars with them for life. I mean, if they lived, that is.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, because they would have been just dragged along the boat.
The bottom. So we're going
Right.
to start on one end, and then you drop them down, and then you haul the rope coming up this way. So they get dragged, and then up, and then around, and then now they're back up on deck again.
Oh.
That's just fun.
The
That's just a fun
width,
activity.
not the length.
It's just a fun activity for the whole crew.
It
to
is,
get
and if you
into.
imagine how a boat is shaped, it goes down at a point there. So he kind of goes down, and he's scraped up by barnacles, and then it's this really sharp hold point, and then it scrape back up again, and then now you're back up on deck. So if you do it fast enough, you might not drown, and you just get shredded like a cheese grater.
That's
a barnacle
terrible.
cheese grater.
Like a barnacle cheese grater.
But everybody
And then
gets
in
to enjoy
salty
that one.
ocean water.
Oh,
no
yeah,
less.
the salt water. Isn't that fun?
Yeah.
And it's cold.
Blood attracts
And
sharks.
terrible.
The sharks, I think it happens fast enough. This is not a slow process, so your friends are trying to keep pulling you fast enough
Your
so you don't drown.
friends?
Well,
No, we're doing this to the guy we don't like.
your coworkers. You did something just
Your
because
coworkers.
you made a mistake doesn't mean you're not my friend still, Mike.
No, this is what
Right?
they do to the guy on the ship nobody likes.
It is a public form of punishment to deter any future misbehaviors.
Don't you dare mutiny.
Or this will happen to you.
Right?
This one was fun. It's called the lead sprinkler. So this is a torture device. Look how innocuous. Doesn't it look
I
like
know,
a
yeah.
baby rattle?
It does. It looks sweet and innocent.
It
My
does.
imagination
It looks like
is
on your
reeling.
makeup, a nice Victorian lady's makeup spread at her cute little
Yeah.
prep station.
Pretty.
I can't
is.
wait
It's
to
cute.
hear what they do with the lead sprinkler.
For reals.
They would shower their victims with molten lead, boiling oil, boiling water, tar, or acid. So it's essentially a ladle at the end with a long iron handle. And then on one half, it has a sphere, and you open the sphere and you fill it with whatever fluid you want of the executioner's choice. And then you close it, and then it's got little holes in the perforated upper half. And then you just sort of sprinkle your victim with hot liquid. And then, so other variations of this torture could include pouring molten metal into a victim's mouth, anus, vagina. This could possibly cause a great deal of pain,
Yeah.
Wait, how is this not an execution? Molten metal into your mouth?
possibly serious burns, and maybe eventual death. In the Mongol Empire, the worst criminals were often punished by pouring molten silver into their eyes.
Nice.
Wow.
Ooh, calling back to blinding.
Yeah, and there's a similar representation of this in Game of Thrones, which we love to call out in this show, apparently.
No spoilers. It does happen, but we don't tell you to who.
I'm pretty sure everyone knows by now. Isn't that season 1?
It is like the end of season 1, yeah.
I mean, it looks like a powder duster. I don't know. It's just too cute to be for something that terrible.
It's definitely not just torture in Game of Thrones. That guy does not make it.
No.
Spoilers.
Yeah, not a torture. That one was an execution. But this one is only meant to maim. Because
That's wild.
you melt when boiling things touch you. So
And then, because it's lead, you get cancer in 20 years.
I mean, I don't think you made it that long, sweetie.
Right? The infections get you first. But if you're lucky enough.
Or the plague.
Yeah.
Or famine.
Or the guy in the cell next to you.
Yeah.
Imagine that. Like, you make it through something horrible like this or the Judas chair, and it's infection that takes you out.
Yeah, it would be. Yeah.
Right?
And then that's a really slow, painful process because there's no antibiotics, and you are literally like, your flesh is rotting away, and you have fever and vomiting and body aches.
Let's thank the Byzantines for giving us some melted vinegar, right? A little
Yes.
antiseptic.
Sometimes. Yeah, if you're lucky. All right, everyone. This here is my absolute favorite. I'm just going to throw that out now. And by the end of the episode, I'm going to ask you guys for your favorites. This has been a favorite of mine from a very young age. Yes, that's who I was as a child. This is the pear of anguish. This fun little device was used on those that had used one of their holes in a naughty or bad way.
Ooh.
This pear was inserted into said offending hole and slowly cranked open until the offending hole was ripped asunder.
Jeez.
If you were accused of gossiping, spreading lies, or talking back to your husband, the pear was inserted into your mouth and opened. This would break your teeth and possibly break or dislocate your jaw. If you are accused of sleeping around, cheating, or being a whore, the pear was inserted into her lady parts and then opened. If a man was accused of sodomy, which is what a gay man was accused of, the pear was inserted back there and open until it ripped. Or it stopped, or whenever they wanted.
Oh my God.
It has a really interesting origin story of around 1620, and it's being used or invented by a French robber that would insert a pear of anguish into the mouths of a person they wanted to rob, and they would give them the key to unlock it later. It was also used by a jailer that had too many prisoners, so he would put a pear in their mouths and then make them just stay there until he unlocked them. And it worked. He didn't need to lock them up anymore. They just sort of like stood around with these horrible contraptions in their mouth until he released them. Your faces.
I'm having trouble with this one. This is
Oh
like
my God.
Yeah, she's
So,
my
and
favorite.
I mean,
It's
it
like-
looks beautiful.
Isn't it
That's
beautiful?
What
Yeah.
I really
Very
don't
ornate.
appreciate about this
There's
is that it's
some-
really pretty. It looks like an ornate perfume bottle that should
Yeah.
be sitting on your counter, but no, it like cranks open into this. It looks like the thing that Arnold Schwarzenegger like shoves up his nose.
Oh,
And
okay,
then
yeah,
Total
yeah.
Recall.
I see that.
to pull the thing out.
Yeah.
Imagine the Antiques Roadshow episode where Grandma brings, what is this? Is it like a perfume bottle? No.
No, this
no,
is my
ma'am.
pear of anguish.
Oh, maybe it's some ancient medieval forceps. No, Grandma.
It kind of is.
Like honestly, it's
The worst kind.
it's just too pretty to be what it is.
Yeah. I like the thought of the jailer just leaving tons of people around, just standing around. Their mouths you couldn't even move because you had to. I mean, that's just the worst.
The drool. I mean the drool.
That's weirdly visceral. I don't appreciate that.
Yeah.
You know what I liked is the robber. That's like Saw vibes.
Yes,
Like,
he
here you
would.
go.
So he would put a pear of anguish into your mouth, and then he would say, like, point me to here, give me the key to your safe, or where are all
Right.
of your valuables, and then I'll give you the key when I leave, and then you
Or
can unlock
crank
your...
it if you were resistant. Could
Exactly.
you even imagine the pain of that? Like
Do you
Exactly.
want to play a game?
having your
Yeah.
jaw stretched so far.
Yeah.
Show me where you keep your safe.
But you have this thing in your mouth, like when the dentist asks how your day was, and you're like, how are you supposed to tell him the code to your safe with a pear in there?
What's your code?
I mean, you don't need to put it in the mouth, right? You got a couple places you can put it.
We enjoy options here at
Yeah,
Histories
exactly.
Uncharted. Yeah, thinking outside the box is what we do here. So that brings us to pitch capping. This is a form of torture which involves pouring hot pitch or tar. This is normally used for like waterproofing in ships or boats or whatever, so it's around a lot. And so you pour it into a conical paper cap, and then you force it onto their head, and then it cools, and then we rapidly rip it off. This victims of pitch capping often suffer loss of skin and tissue around their heads.
I'm sorry, like we watch this happen on TikTok like every day now.
With
Like where they cover the men in wax and then they proceed to wax their whole entire scalp off.
Well,
that's called pitch capping.
That's called pitch capping.
Wow. See, here's an example of one that we still do.
I was gonna say it
Wow.
reminded me of waxing eyebrows and whatnot.
Yeah.
They had it. They had it since medieval times. They knew. They knew it.
That's
This has
insane.
been a popular.
That
we
is
like
so
this.
funny.
Yeah.
Still a popular pastime. That's why I couldn't stop laughing because I'm like, we do this, but also Mike pointed out the extreme camel toe
Yeah,
on the
there's a-
picture. that
There's
we
a very
used.
particular object, very central to the picture we have here. And it's
Of the-
very, yeah, like
So what he is referring is the victim is down on their knees, and the person inflicting the pitch capping is standing next to them. But the picture is cropped just so that all you see is the victim's head and the crotch of
Yeah, they
the
got-
perpetrator.
very tight pants, very tight pants.
I'm sorry, it's just a Google search.
Yeah. It's
I wanted
cool.
you to
It's
see
of
the
the times
image.
though. Like I literally read an article just the other day that like the camel toe is coming back.
Oh
as,
no,
like, a
no, no!
fashionable
It's not,
accessory
ladies.
for
It's not.
women.
No one.
That's a thing.
No, it's not.
Apparently,
Hey,
apparently.
Don't listen to the.
Histories Uncharted on YouTube. See the camel toe for yourself.
I'm sorry.
It's a good one. It's a good one.
It's a gentleman perpetrator, just so everyone knows. No
I
women
know,
is not.
just so you're not a.
Are
Yeah,
we calling
it
it a
is.
moose knuckle then?
I'm so sorry. I got it wrong. The booth knuckle.
Yeah, I feel like we can really thank men for being the torturers here. It's
you
not going to
can.
be
Yeah.
probably not going to be a women torturer.
Not
That's not
often,
true.
but-
You may be surprised in some
I'm
of
sure I
our
would be.
upcoming episodes. I really like to focus on women in history because men have had a lot of representation through history. So I like to bring a lot of women and women characters and stories to life. And that's what we do here.
That's why I appreciate you inviting me here, because that's true.
It is.
You didn't need to have someone like me who is a man, and I'm appreciative of my stance as an ally.
I appreciate that because you really are. You're one of our favorites, Mike.
Yeah.
So thank you again for being here and enjoying. Mike's also a really, really nice guy and a sweet guy. So Cecilia and myself thought it was kind of hilarious to have him on the torture episode because it really does make him very uncomfortable. And that makes us enjoy it all the more.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, the problem I have is with the male-focused ones, right? Because
Well,
that's
don't worry.
super like,
we are
oh my
equal
god.
opportunity here. Okay?
Yeah.
The pair of anguish is equal opportunity. Just
Ooh,
throwing it out
sure
there.
is. As is Judas chair. I mean, a lot of these really
Pitch
are.
capping?
They were used
I mean,
for both
lead
men
sprinkler?
and women.
Any of these, yeah.
Yeah.
Really, the only monopoly you have is the crocodile shears, sir.
Ooh.
And I will counter that later in the alphabet.
I don't like the crocodile shears.
Those
I
are-
had forgotten
those
about
are pretty
those, and I wish I kept that forgotten.
I'll send you a picture on your. I'll text it to you every couple days. Just to
Oh,
remind-
thank you. Yeah,
Hi, Mike. It's been a while. Just wanted to remind you of the crocodile shears.
appreciate it.
You're
Yeah,
welcome.
thanks, boss.
All right, so what we have up next is the rack. So the rack is a torture device that consists of a rectangular wooden frame, slightly raised from the ground, and has a roller at one end, or maybe both. And then they fix your feet to one end, and then they fix your hands to the other. And then they would twist and roll the roller, and you are slowly pulled apart. The torturer turns the handles, and eventually the victim's bones were dislocated with a loud crack caused by the snapping cartilage, ligaments, or even the bones. If the torturer kept turning the handles, the limbs would eventually be torn off. Even forcing the prisoners to watch someone else being tortured on the rack was often enough to extract confessions.
Oh.
In the later Middle Ages, a new, even more gruesome design of the rack appeared. Spikes penetrating the victim's back were added, so as the limbs were pulled apart, so was the spine.
Nice.
Yeah.
And this one that would last like a greater period of time too. Like you could stretch this one out, right?
Right, so hours, days, repeated use.
Get it? Stretch this one out.
I didn't, but I do now. I got it. Thank you. Yeah.
Right
so-
with dad jokes, dude.
Yeah, he is. I was just last night even. I feel like the rack would feel so good. Stretching for me and
Yeah.
my particular ailments feels very, very good. I would just want a safe word, because I don't want to be like obviously pulled apart. But the stretching really does appeal to me, and I've always wanted
Yeah,
to
dude.
try the
I feel
rack.
that.
For me, I think it would be the noises of the popping of a human body and the ripping
Yeah, I don't want to get
of our
that far.
ligaments and muscles. Yeah.
I just want to stretch. I don't want to be ripped apart.
We're definitely talking about a spectrum of enjoyment here. And it ends pretty close to the start.
I could imagine a nice long, because I like to grab on and just let the whole body just
See what I'm saying?
sag
Yeah, I think the
with it.
rack would
Yeah.
feel good to a point.
To a certain point,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah. So one of the most popular victims of the rack, because it was used a lot. I can't even tell you. It's just a very common thing. We're going to talk about Guy Fawkes. So he is one of the co-conspirators in the gunpowder plot, and this is a
Remember the 5th of November.
Good job, Mike. It's a super fun event in English history, and I feel like it's going to end up being an episode because it's super fun.
Stay
Betrayal,
tuned.
yeah. Conspiracy, treason, betrayal. So Guy Fawkes was caught, and he was put on the rack so that he could give up the people that participated in this plot with him.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So every single major joint in his body was distended and dislocated. He was sentenced to death by hanging, drawing, and quartering, but he got around this because when he went to go hang, which is the first part of it, he jumped off the scaffolding and broke his own neck, so he didn't have to endure the rest of the hanging, drawing, and quartering.
A good
But
idea.
the image that I have is an example of the results on a human's body after being put on the rack. So what this is examples of his signature before being tortured and after being tortured, because he had to sign his confession. It was before being on the rack and after being on the rack. And you can see, if you Google it or go on to our YouTube to watch this episode, the first one is very legible and the second one is very very not.
He did a really good job on the second one on his first name, but as soon as he got to his last name,
Yeah, I mean,
he ran out of stamina big time.
Yeah. I know it does say Guido. It's if you ever listen to our future episode, he goes and changes his name from Guy to Guido. It's part of a revolutionary thing. But that's why it says Guido and not Guy. But this is Guy Fawkes' official signatures. Yeah. So you can kind of see how traumatic it could be on your body,
Absolutely.
I'm surprised he could write anything.
right? Yeah. So that brings us to scalping. Americans are pretty familiar with scalping, so we're going to do a couple different fun versions. So as we all know, the scalping is the act of cutting or tearing a part of the human scalp with the hair attached away from the head. This generally occurred in warfare, and then the scalp was being kept as a trophy. So this is an excerpt of a witness that watched Native Americans in the early years of the American nation. So they seized the head of the disabled enemy, and placing one of their feet on the neck, they twist their left hand in their hair. By this means, they have extended the skin that covers the top of the head, and they draw out their scalping knives, which are always kept in good order for this cruel purpose, and with a few dexterous strokes take off the part that is termed the scalp. They are so expeditious in doing this that the whole time required scarcely exceeded a minute.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so how do you not bleed to death when you lose this much skin?
Oh, that's not that much. I know that there's a lot of blood vessels in the head, but there are many people that survive scalping, unfortunately. If they were going to leave you alive. I mean, normally this is done to corpses to claim scalps and stuff, but some people were left alive. So, another fun version, which we discussed in the Vlad Tepes episode.
Right.
You cut off the edge of the face and you peel the skin off while they are still alive. So there's another one where Herodotus, he's the father of history, just throwing it out there. He wrote that Scythian warriors would behead the enemies they defeated in battle and present the heads to their king to claim their share of plunder. Then the warrior would skin the head by making a circular cut around the ears and shaking out the skull. He then scrapes the flesh off the skin with the rib of an ox. When it is clean, he works it with his fingers until it is supple and fit to be used as a handkerchief. He hangs these handkerchiefs from the bridle of his horse and is very proud of them. The best man is the man who has the greatest number of handkerchiefs.
I pride myself on my handkerchief collection. Mine are so supple.
I have the most supple scalp handkerchiefs.
I don't know. There's just something to that. I don't know. It just
How long does it
bothers
take?
me. It's like things going into fingernails and like things with like the head and the
Not your
scalp
jam,
and
huh?
skin, peeling of skin. It just that really.
We're going to have so much fun next week.
I bet we are.
I like the idea of shaking the skull out. That's cool. Like just
shaking the skull out.
cutting a hole in a bag of onions that's a little too small. You shake them out.
Yeah, you do. I kind of saw that too. This one's fun. Those pesky wives, whenever they start gossiping, husbands in the Middle Ages would grab their trusty scold's bridle. This was a contraption that was made out of an iron, forming a cage around a woman's head, and then it had this metal prong that inserted into her mouth. This prevented her from speaking, eating, or drinking properly. She was then paraded around the village to add to her humiliation.
Oh.
She would be left in this for hours, days, weeks. It would, chafe around your mouth, rust, you're drooling, you can't eat or drink properly, speak, swallow. Gosh, it's like holding your tongue down, swallowing, and then your teeth clacking against it like you get infections in your mouth. Like, it was fun.
Absolutely. That looks disgusting.
So this one is less actual physical pain. This one just kind of is meant to sit on you, and maybe by the end you are it obviously hurts, but there's nothing like, it's not ripping your tongue out or anything like that.
No, I mean, it's not going to be fatal unless you caught a secondary infection from rust and iron in your mouth and stuff like that. But
it's not like a long-term maiming of a person.
Right.
It's just a
humiliation.
That's just, but also, I could only imagine that.
It would hurt. Yeah, it would hurt.
That hurts so bad. When was this commonly used?
In the Middle Ages.
Middle Ages.
So this ain't titanium or steel. This is heavy iron.
Rusty
Rusty
Gross.
iron.
Ugh, the drool.
Yeah.
That's all I could think.
You keep going for the drool. I don't like. It's too detailed.
I appreciate that.
Next, we are looking at the strappado. This is where the prisoner is hung by one or both arms. So sometimes this is just how they chill in their cell. Sometimes weights are added to their legs to increase the pressure and dislocation of the shoulder sockets. The arms can either be hung above your head or behind your back, and then you're hung. This is particularly painful as our arms don't bend that way.
They sure don't.
They sure don't. One of the most famous people that was tortured in this way was Niccolo Machiavelli.
Oh, Machiavelli.
Yeah. So in 1513, he was imprisoned after allegedly conspiring against the Medici family in Florence, and he was famously hung on the strappado. Another one was in 1498. Friar Girolamo Savonarola. I'm sorry. So he was tortured into confessing that his prophecies and visions were fake. He was supposed to endure a trial by fire, but it started to rain, so they threw him in jail. And they began to just torture him into confessing, and then when he did, they hung him while he was being burned alive. It dried out, apparently, a few days later.
Again, we're talking about the rain comes to save him from this particular thing. Maybe it's a sign, guys.
Maybe. I don't know. It seems like the universe might have been just, talking to them. They just weren't ready to see it.
Cool.
They knew what they wanted to do.
Yeah, they had their dream board, their goals.
Yeah, their goal board, yeah.
And they weren't going to be deterred from doing this. So this is a super fun one, tarring and feathering. This is a form of public torture where a victim is stripped naked and then wood tar, most often hot, is poured or painted onto the person. The victim was either thrown into a bunch of feathers or rolled into a pile of feathers so that they stuck in the tar. This was often used to enforce unofficial justice or revenge. It was used in medieval Europe and the colonies until quite a frankly very modern period. And it was in the early American frontier a common form of vigilante justice.
Oh my God. So boiling hot tar painted on your skin.
Or poured, yeah. And then threw feathers on them.
And then feathers on top of your 3rd-degree burns.
Yeah.
Nice.
And it takes a long time to get off, so you carry this with you for a few weeks. I mean, you never bathed back then either. So.
Hey guys, if you still need a Halloween costume, this is a good way to get your chicken costume sorted out.
So in 1623, there was a German Protestant military leader that came across a monastery of nuns and friars. So those are Catholic, and the Protestants and the Catholics don't like each other. All right.
Classic.
So he caused all of the feather beds to be ripped and all of the feathers thrown into the Great Hall. Then the nuns and friars were stripped naked and their bodies covered in oil and pitched and then tumbled into the Great Hall to be covered in feathers.
God, that's humiliating.
At first, that could have just
That's
started
so
as like a prank. And then we took it. The prank went way too far.
A little too far. Yeah. It's like a frat pranks going
really,
too far.
really mean-spirited frat.
Right?
Yeah. All right, here's an always popular one used very often through many, many ages and societies, the thumbscrew.
No.
So this is a really simple device. It is often crushing bars that line up with sharp metal teeth, and then again it's like a crank that they tighten. It is used to slowly crush the victim's thumbs or other fingers. The crushing of the fingers was achieved by turning the handle on the top, slowly pushing its tooth-crushing bars together. This torture method was primarily used to extract confessions from prisoners, as it was both extremely painful, and here you go, Mike, could last for hours or even days.
Endurance.
He enjoys the endurance ones, folks.
Well, this one we have a couple different uses, right? Don't cheat in cards.
Theft, maybe.
Don't steal.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is a really good way to give your opponent a handicap in a thumb war.
Oh.
That's the worst thumb war ever. So in the 17th century, an Italian artist was raped. She went to the local officials to report her crime, but since she was just a woman, her word was not good enough. Therefore, she was subjected to thumbscrews to assure the validity of her statement. Afterwards, she was unable to hold a paintbrush and was never able to paint again. Her rapist served a year in jail.
That kills
I
the
know.
the horrible and blatant injustice.
That's
That
vibes.
really grates.
That really. Go thumbscrews.
Yeah. They were used quite often. Very common. Here's a fun one for you guys. It's called the tickle torture. We kind of touched with this in Tepps. Vlad Tepps again. I think he's...
Oh, yeah, with the salt and the goats.
That's what
yeah.
this is. So a goat was compelled to lick the victim's feet because they had been dipped in salt or salt water. Once the goat had licked all the salt off, the victim would be re-dipped in and the process would be repeated.
I couldn't even imagine because I literally want to piss my pants when I am tickled. It's painful.
It could be a torture, yes.
It's painful. I could only imagine for like autistic people that how painful that must be.
Yeah.
Tickle torture.
I'm not going to lie. My husband's extremely ticklish, and I use this against him quite often. It's a thing.
Oh, so that's why the goat's in the backyard. Okay.
Yes. We have many uses for goats here.
So, did this cause any, like, lasting pain or damage? Did
No.
they, like, lick the skin off or anything?
No, not in this particular example, but if you listen to our Vlad the Impaler episode, he would enjoy cutting the skin off of the feet and then coating it with salt and then letting the goats lick it. So, there you go.
That would have been really painful.
Speechless. Y'all are speechless.
The salting wounds in general.
Yeah.
Sounds terrible.
Another often used medieval torture was the water cure. This is a form of torture in which the victim is forced to drink large quantities of water in a very short period of time. This results in gastric distension, water intoxication, and possibly death.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So this is accomplished by they lay the victim down, their mouth is forced or wedged open. The nose is closed with pincers and a funnel is shoved down the throat. The victim has to drink all of the water or other liquids such as bile or urine. It's poured into the funnel or you drown. The stomach fills until near bursting, swelling up in the process, and is sometimes beaten until the victim vomits and the torture begins again.
What?
That's nasty. See, how does this not immediately cause water intoxication, though?
Oh, for real?
Well, it does.
It does.
And
So
then
they die.
Not always.
That's why they make them throw it up.
Yeah, so they can do it again.
Nice.
Yeah, it's an endurance for you. So here's an example of one.
I'm writing all these
Sienna.
down. Yeah.
We like examples here at Histories Uncharted. So first they hoisted him up by the hands with a cord on a large door and forced a wedge into his mouth and a funnel down his throat. The water poured into the funnel at length took away his breath and brought him to a swoon or fainting. Then they took him quickly down and made him vomit up the water. Being a little recovered, they trussed him up again and poured water as before, taking him down as soon as he seemed to faint. In this manner they handled him 3 or 4 times with the water, until his body was swollen twice, or even thrice as big as before, his cheeks like great bladders, and his eyes starting and strutting out of his forehead.
Yeah, because he's like dealing with water intoxication. Like, seriously, your electrolytes, man, you get all... That's insane. What happens? Like, I think you start seizing at some point. Like, you just eventually go brain dead. Like, it's a really, really terrible, horrible, scary process.
But at least you're hydrated.
I guess.
They're making sure you're hydrated. You have enough to drink.
A hydrated corpse?
A lot of this focuses on, like, filling it and then pushing it out.
That's
is
so...
a big thing. So this is an account from a survivor that had been tortured.
Okay.
The first and second glasses of water I gladly received. Such was the scorching draught of my tormenting pain, and likewise I had drunk none for 3 days before. But afterward, at the third charge, perceiving these measures of water to be inflicted upon me as tortures, oh, strangling tortures, I closed my lips. Enraged, the jailer set my teeth asunder with a pair of iron prongs, whereupon my hunger-clung belly waxed great and grew drum-like, a suffocating pain in regards because my head hung downwards, and the water re-engorging itself in my throat with a struggling force, it strangled and swallowed upon my breath from yowling and groaning.
So he literally spent days just being completely depleted of anything and everything. Dude, I drink 8 ounces of water early in the morning and I feel like I'm going to throw up. I can't even imagine. This poor guy.
Yeah.
It's intense. And then he had to like pull it all out.
It doesn't say he released in any way.
Oh, okay.
Just that he was hanging upside down and how much it like strangled him and suffocated him as he was engorged.
I mean, you know how it sounds like when someone drinks a bunch of water and like sloshes in their belly and stuff? Like, oh God, I can't even imagine.
He's sloshing like crazy.
Ugh.
So, Mike, this one here is just for you because I had completed all of my research for this episode until
you.
I invited you, and we had a brief conversation about tortures before
My
the episode.
favorite conversations.
Yeah, they always are. And you asked about this one in particular, so I thought I'd go ahead and dig it up and throw it in just for you. So this is the Chinese water torture. Mike asked, is this really a thing? Why? Why would this even be a thing? So this is a mentally painful process in which cold water is slowly dripped onto the scalp, forehead, or face for a prolonged period of time. The process causes fear and mental deterioration on the subject. The pattern of the drops is often irregular and the cold sensation is jarring, which causes anxiety as a person tries to anticipate the next drip. There's very little evidence pertaining to the effectiveness of torture for interrogation purposes. It was invented by Hippolytus de Maracillus. He was around 1451, and he was a lawyer. He discovered that drops of water would consistently fall on a victim's forehead, causing the victim to go insane. He was also the first person to document sleep deprivation as a means of torture.
Ooh.
Wow.
Hippolytus was messed up.
Yeah, I wonder the element of him being a lawyer.
Yeah, he wasn't even a doctor, he was a lawyer.
What was his time?
1451-ish.
That was very early.
Yeah.
Poe was
1809 to 1849.
I wonder if he had ever heard of
The
Hippolytus.
closest to him is 1453 is the fall of Constantinople. So he was born right before the fall of Constantinople.
Well, I'm sure that Poe read a lot about ancient history.
He's a learned man.
wars and
Yeah, he
stuff.
was.
He would have been very learned and probably Hippolytus.
So, are we thinking that this is one that we still theoretically use today?
Chinese water torture was coined that in the late 19th century, even though it was created in the 14th century, and has documented uses all the way up until like the 1970s and probably even later once things start to be released to the public through the Freedom of Information Act from our beloved CIA.
Yeah, I feel like this one is one where we could say, oh, well, we're just dropping some water on you. It's not really torture.
Right.
Yeah, but it is established to be a form of mental torture.
Sure,
Right.
yeah.
The slow burn insanity of it all, I could imagine. Like,
So apparently there was an anonymous... So Mythbusters did an episode on this, and they
really?
found that it was not very effective, but they received anonymous comments that when we used uniform pattern drops, the victim was able to tune it out as meditation. But when we applied irregular patterns of sizes of drops, it led to anxiety and more mental torture, and they were able to break a victim within 20 minutes.
20 minutes. Wow.
20 minutes.
Yeah. Per some anonymous alleged comment to a Mythbuster episode.
That's interesting.
Yeah, that was interesting.
Wait. Are they saying that they used this to break somebody in 20 minutes? Like,
That's
they're
Yeah.
kind of telling them on
It
themselves,
wasn't myth.
right?
Correct. That's why it was an anonymous submission.
Definitely don't
Comment.
work for the CIA, or used to.
So this is a super fun one.
yeah.
It still goes with water tortures. We're still in the water tortures, and this is called the Swedish drink. This is a method of torture which the victim is forced to swallow large amounts of foul liquid, in particular excrement.
Oh, gross.
That's horrible.
This name was invented by German victims of Swedish troops during the 30 Years' War, which was 1618 to 1648. This method of torture was administered by troops and mercenaries and marauders. This was used to force peasants or town citizens to hand over hidden money, food, animals, or to rape women. They laid the bound victim on the ground, stuck a wooden wedge into their mouth, and poured into his belly a bucket full of disgusting liquid manure, which they called a Swedish drink. Apart from this disgust, illness, and the possibility of bacterial infection, the Swedish drink inflicted intense gastric pain.
Oh.
Liquids are incompressible, which means the victim's stomachs and bowels were expanded to painful proportions to accommodate the copious amounts of fluid. The torturers then squeezed the distended belly with wooden boards, or trampled the victim underfoot, or beat them with sticks. Sometimes they stabbed them in the stomach with spears.
Oh my God. Like, part of me can handle the water cure, okay? Because it's water.
Yeah, it's just water.
But this is
Intentionally foul. Yes.
intentionally foul.
Intended to,
Oh
yes,
my
intentionally
gosh.
foul.
Oh.
Yeah, part of the water cure was like, oh, I hadn't had any water for a couple days. It was a little bit nice at first.
Thanks, guys. I can take a couple
Immediately
cups.
terrible.
There's no part of the Swedish drink that is nice.
Exactly. No, that one's a rough one. All right.
I rather Chinese water torture.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
All right. This brings us to W. We're at W, guys.
Getting close.
Getting close. Whipping. Typically, the one to be punished was stripped naked and bound to a low pillar so he could be bent over, or chained to an upright pillar so to be stretched out. And then the whippers alternated blows from the bare shoulders down the body to the soles of the feet. There was no limit to the number of blows inflicted. This was left up to the punishers to decide. It was not normally supposed to kill the victim. Flagellation was often referred to as the half-death, as many victims died shortly thereafter. Cicero reports, taken away for a dead man, shortly thereafter he was dead. Whipping occurred during the French Revolution, though not as an official punishment. Okay, so on May 31st, 1793, a revolutionary leader, female, Anne Josephine, I'm not even going to try to say that big, long.
Josephine.
Yeah, Anne. Anne here was stripped naked and flogged on the bare bottom in the public garden. After this humiliation, she refused to wear any clothes in memory of the outrage she had suffered. She went mad and ended her days in an asylum after her public whipping.
I mean, that's fair, honestly. Being tortured, I would not fault you for going insane afterwards.
Yeah.
I probably would join you.
No, for sure. I think being that close to death, for some people, it can break you.
Yeah.
You know?
I don't know how much I would be able to take. I mean, I stubbed my toe in the middle of the night, man. I'm complaining for a week.
Exactly.
Like, it's rough.
The amount of pain that is so many orders of magnitude than
Yeah.
you've ever experienced before.
And unfortunately, the human body is very resilient. And we really can endure a lot.
Yeah, the Judas chair can prove that.
And we just heal and then take more.
Yeah.
It's just crazy. So there's a particular form of whipping. It's called the bastinado. It's a method of inflicting pain and humiliation by administering a beating on the soles of a person's bare feet.
Oh.
Yeah, this is meant to be very painful, more than to cause actual injury. They're literally, they are generally delivered by a light rod, knotted cord, or lash, and this is one that is still used today.
Where
really?
is this
Yeah.
used?
Man, there was a lot of references in the
Okay.
Google search, and unfortunately a lot of them were American.
Breaking the bottom of the feet.
Yeah.
Seems very Dolores Claiborne.
That one's rough because, I mean, of course, it's the bottom of your feet. You can't walk.
Yeah.
Right.
You're not going to want to walk.
Right.
I can handle most body pain, but wounds on your fingers, hands, feet, like your extremities, I think fingers so much because we have to use them so much, like the woman who was raped and
The
then
painter,
tortured
yeah.
with her fingers.
Yeah,
like
that
you
one.
need your hands. That's so disruptive to life.
A lot of victims of the thumb screws did eventually have loss of income, loss of job. Maybe they were artisans or tradesmen, farmers. Everyone uses their hands. Blacksmith, everyone uses their hands. So after being subjected to thumb screws, they often did lose their livelihood.
Yeah.
And that was the worst part about it.
Right.
Was that she didn't even do anything wrong.
Right.
The injustice on that one. Oh man, it's gonna take a while for me to get over that.
Which is longer?
Oh, but okay.
This or the crocodile shears?
I mean, I haven't mentioned it either, but for me, it's teeth.
Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, the breaking teeth. That's why the pear earlier inserted into the mouth to like smash the teeth open. That was pretty terrible.
Nice.
Keep my teeth intact, please.
All right, folks, we have come to the last one. This is called the witch's iron, maybe the spider iron, or most commonly, the breast ripper. This torture device was designed especially for use on women. The breast ripper was one of the most brutal torture methods in the entire Middle Ages. It was usually used as punitive or a way to interrogate a female criminal accused of adultery, self-induced abortion, blasphemy, heresy, or witchcraft. Okay, so it looks like those clawed staple removers, kinda. And then you heat it up till it's red hot, and then its claws were placed onto the victim's breasts while the spikes penetrated them, achieving a powerful grasp. The ripper was then pulled away, ripping and shredding the breasts. Victims were usually scarred for life, as her breasts were usually torn apart. Due to heavy blood loss or infection, death often followed. A common variant of the breast ripper was known as the spider or tarantula. It was a similar instrument attached to a wall of a torture chamber. Breasts of the victims were fixed to the clawed bars, and then she was then pulled away by the executioner away from the wall, severely mutilating or even tearing her breasts off.
That is horrible.
I don't even have words. That sounds just ripped away from the wall.
I mean, imagine how much force it would take to rip a person so hard that part of them remains on the wall.
The ones that specifically target women get me too, because I mean, it's a case by case basis, but I'm thinking that in general they didn't do anything to deserve it, right? It's in cases like
it
witchcraft.
clearly said right here: adultery, blasphemy, witchcraft. You've got to punish the witches, Mike.
Yeah.
You gotta take them down.
You can't just let witchcraft run rampant.
The abortion one too.
Self-induced abortion, don't you think that woman has endured enough?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, I can't have this child. Let me do something to keep my quality of life intact.
Nope.
Well, no. Here you go. How about a horrible punishment?
All right, so now that we have gone through the A to Z of amazing torture methods and devices, which from you guys is your number one? Just as a reminder to listeners, my favorite form of torture is and always has been the pear of anguish. So, Cecilia.
So I think I really enjoy the Heretic's Fork. I thought that was really cool. I think it's an artistic situation for me. I don't know. It seems very...
It makes you confess your deepest fears and secrets.
I know. So there's that physical pain of it, but I think it's like the Chinese water torture, right? That psychological factor that's involved with it. It seems very creepy. It seems like something that you would potentially find in like a modern day BDSM bedroom.
Yeah, it'd be rough, man.
If we're holding the truth stick. It's interesting. I really, really like that. I think the most disturbing one for me overall was the Swedish drink.
Yeah, that's a rough one.
I really don't appreciate the excrement
Yeah, that's rough.
drinking. I think that's where I draw the line. You can rip my tits off. That's cool. We're not here for the poop smoothie.
All right, then, Mike, how about you?
I did enjoy the ones that had the psychological element to them, that weren't necessarily overtly scarring or painful, like the tickle torture or I guess the water cure, but that one, we draw the line on that one. But I mean, I guess as a man, the brutality of the crocodile shears, it really kills.
That's from the torture chamber's special show.
You guys,
crocodile shears.
Any male listeners, you guys know the visceral reaction you get in your body when anything like that, when you're challenged or when the thought of it is applied to you. When you think of something like that, you know what I'm talking about, boys.
I just want all of you to know he's cringing right now. He feels very uncomfortable.
And so are they.
So
are any male listeners. They're cringing too.
Good. Then I feel like I have achieved my goals of hopefully making as many of you cringe as possible in one way or the other. And I feel that if you would like, please leave in the comments your favorite form of torture method or device. And I personally want to thank Mike again for joining us here.
Thank you guys so much. This has been a blast.
It was. Histories Uncharted is super excited when we get visitors. This was lots of fun. And I hope that the listeners continue to listen to the rest of our October spooky Halloween macabre dark series, as what is coming up next week is fun executions.
Whoop whoop.
So please join us again next time, as we have enjoyed going through the tales of terror of torture. Hopefully you have too. So thank you so much. And here is Histories Uncharted signing off.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
Happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween.
Hey everyone, we just wanted to take a minute and thank you for listening to us here at Histories Uncharted. We know you have lots of options out there, and we are super grateful you chose to share this hour with us. As a brand new podcast, it takes a lot to get started in the beginning, so if you could please rate us, follow us, leave a comment, or even share our podcast with someone you think would love to hear a cool story. You can do one or all three, but whatever you do, we would love to hear from you.